Hello everyone, I'm Vesper the Evening Star, and I'll be your host today here on Vesper's Fanfiction Time. Today we will be reading Chapter 5 of Tunnel Vision, written by ROMII BIRDIE. So without further ado, let's jump right into the story. Everything was burning. Tomura Shigaraki was slowly regenerating his skin that had been charred into nothing more than exposed flesh, while the heroes tried to regroup underneath him. He had literally torn that old geezer into pieces, using his artificially enhanced strength to rip the elder's lower intestine out of his feeble body, while the younger hero screamed in horror in the background. It had been a rather lovely sound, to Tomura, at least. Hearing the fear, disgust, and despair in their voices and on their faces, until the little pain in the ass threw himself back into the fray with his own mini version of Tomura's quirk. The damn pipsqueak was using cheat codes to fight back, activating that irritating whip-like quirk while floating in the air like some cheap version of Tomura's master. He wasn't even going to think about the sheer strength of that little bastard in question before his fellow hero buddies eventually decided to back him up. However, the second that Tomura had impaled the explosive tempered brat, it had summoned a demon within Midoriya, and his temperament had completely changed. It had been frightening, if Tomura was being completely honest with himself, without his pride getting in the way of the truth. But ultimately, Midoriya's terrifying wrath had been his downfall. Endeavor had been blasted away. Best Genius was occupied with trying to move Gran Turo and Bakugo out of range for any aftershock that threatened to occur. Eraserhead wasn't faring well either. After cutting off his leg, he had soon given up the struggle and promptly passed out, while some water-quirked hero tried to apply emergency first aid on the gushing wound. For some strange reason, Midoriya's rage had intertwined with his own, and the two found themselves floating into the abyss, inside a strange void-like world that revealed several wisps of One-for-All's fragments. Midoriya hadn't been able to move very well, but Tomura's own willpower was being tested to its limits, when his breathing suddenly became very difficult, and the air around them grew incredibly heavy. Tomura hadn't even had a chance to breathe when something began to constrict around his body. The same way a python would curl around its prey and crush the life out of it, there had been a deep and intense burning sensation from his spine before a ghostly voice whispered it in his ear, and the deadly aura of All for One submerged him into an ocean of thick mist, and he had not been able to climb back out. Until, all of a sudden, he was retreating, speaking down at the heroes with a voice that wasn't his own, while it felt like phantom hands were squeezing his bare shoulders. Painful and possessive. Do I want this? Tomura let out a shuddery, broken exhale. He honestly didn't know anymore. Shigaraki! Midoriya's sudden bellow reached his sensitive ears, the teen propelling through the air with his hand reaching out towards him, like he actually wanted Tomura to take it. The manic youth would have laughed out loud if it didn't physically hurt to speak. Was this kid serious? I want to help you! That was enough for Tomura's nostrils to flare up in utter fury. He held out his palm, scarlet eyes burning like deadly fire at the insolent child barreling towards him. I don't want your help, Izuku. In one simple flick of Tomura's wrist, Midoriya was hit straight in the temple of his head. His body had instantly gone limp, whether it had been from that one final attack or the sheer exhaustion consuming him from their battle. Tomura had no idea. The young villain had sent out tendrils to catch the thorn in his side before he fell back down to earth and shattered upon impact. He hated the hero-worshipping brat more than anything, but unfortunately, he was needed alive. For now. Blood immediately began to leak from a nasty-looking gash in his head, and the Nomu instantly moved their heads towards the wound, like they were drawn to the scent of Midoriya's blood. The boy let out a whimper, his eyes blurry as he fought a losing battle to regain consciousness. Tomura's lips twisted at the sight. Pitiful. Enough, came the sharp order from Tomura's distorted voice, and the Nomu instantly fell into line, lowering their blank gazes and bowing their heads like they were worshipping the villain. He cast a glance at Izuku, the teen's words echoing around inside Tomura's skull. Don't think about that now. It's not important. Tomura's teeth ground together. His feelings didn't matter. Master already knew what needed to be done. He shut his eyes tightly, a sharp pain emanating from his own temple as a groan pushed past his chapped lips. If he truly believed what his brain was telling him, why did it feel so wrong? He pressed a hand against his communication device, throat raw as he called out, "Anybody still alive that can hear me?" At first, nothing came through. For several seconds that felt much longer, Tomura didn't receive an answer until, "Some of us were able to take cover, boss." Tomura groaned, one of the random NPCs who had been a follower of Redestructo. "You'll be happy though, sir." The villain's face curled into a slurly glare. This certainly would be good. Oh, what could possibly make him happy right now? Himiko Toga was able to get the doctor back from the heroes. Tomura blinked. Well, shit. Color impressed him. Some loudmouth hero was trying to get the doc back to the cops, but Himiko was able to stop him in time. Don't know if he's still alive, because he looked pretty banged up when I got to them. Pretty sure he stabbed him, like, several times. Then the speaker was suddenly snatched, judging from the fuzzy background noise and an indignant cry of, "Hey!" "We've secured the dock," Toga explained, voice completely devoid of any emotion. Extremely out of character for her usual behavior. "We'll send coordinates as soon as—" There had been a pause before a tiny trace of emotion returning in her words. "On second thoughts, an opportunity has just opened up. I'll rendezvous with you after I get some answers from an old friend." "Whatever," Tomura grunted, his vision fuzzy as his Nomu rumbled in chorus around him. He made one more glance towards Izuku. "Oh, can you put the doc on for a second? Got something to tell him, and I think he'll be interested." Toga huffed irritably on the other end. Painfully thin, almost skeleton-like fingers gripped around the door handle tightly. Toshinori slowly let out a raspy huff of air from his own parted lips, his gaunt features scrunched into an expression of pure discomfort. What remained of his stomach twisted itself into an unbreakable knot whenever his student entered his thoughts. Midoriya's bright smile, sheer kindness and willingness to help people in a world that had shunned him for the majority of his life, simply for being born quirkless. Despite this, he had been so good. A hard lump caught in his throat, and his sunken eyes watered painfully as he tried to blink away the tears that threatened to form. Why had everything gone so wrong? There were hums of voices beyond the door, the remnants of Class 1A who had stayed by young Bakugo's side as he recovered from his near-fatal wounds, were conversating and laughing with their wounded friend, making light of such a dark situation. Toshinori's mouth curled into a watery smile. The younger generation were much stronger than the old ones would ever give them credit for. They were no doubt curious about the events that had gone down in Jaku. Several heroes died in battle, many civilians were killed or injured in the impact, and their classmates, well, Toshinori himself couldn't move down towards fast enough upon hearing the confirmation of Bakugo regaining consciousness. He didn't want to press the injured boy too much, but any information he could reveal about Shigaraki would be crucial to the ongoing investigation. "Young Bakugo," he called out, following up with a few knocks while cringing inwardly over how meek his voice sounded. "May I come in?" There were hushed whispers, sounds of material scrunching together, which were then followed by hasty footsteps, and murmurs of, "Get well soon." The door was then thrusted open, and several of the 1A students fled out, led by Kirishima, who ducked his red spiky locks at Toshinori in respect, before hurrying away with the rest of his classmates. "Shouldn't you be joining the investigation with your police buddies?" came a gruff mutter from the bedside. Bakugo was propped up against his hospital bed with thick pillows, a long IV tube connected to his arm while he breathed out roughly, wincing as he shifted around under the thin sheet covering his bandaged body. I wanted to check to make sure you were all right." Toshinori winced at how weak his words sounded. Bakugo didn't look convinced and let out a bitter snort. "Yeah, doing pretty good after being turned into a live pincushion. Next time I see that fucker, I'll blow his entire fucking body to smithereens." "Young Bakugo," Toshinori's voice trailed off. What the hell did he even say to this kid? I'm sorry? Sorry for what, exactly? His brows knitted together, head pounding from the upcoming headache, threatening to spread across his temple. Sorry you almost got killed when you shouldn't have been there in the first place? Sorry that your childhood friend is... A gasp escaped his throat before he could stop it, and he covered his mouth, bending his knees while Bakugo watched him silently. And then the boy spoke up again. He's gone, isn't he? Toshinori squeezed his eyes shut. He thought he could do this, but he was wrong. Again. Tense silence hung over the two males, making them both feel as if they were drowning in a thick liquid, unable to climb free from the stifling tightness in their chest, until a timid knock snapped both of their attention to the door, which was followed by a quiet, "Excuse me?" As the door slowly opened, a familiar green-haired woman stepped into view, face slightly blotchy, as if she'd been crying. "Miss Midoriya?" Toshinori gulped while Bakugo muttered under his breath, averting his scarlet gaze down at his bedsheet. "Can I help? He's live." Sharp's cyan eyes blinked several times. I beg your pardon." Inko gripped the thick crocheted fabric of her cardigan, eyes like giant emerald pools as she stared directly into Toshinori's own gaze. "All Might-san," she spoke, voice barely above a whisper as her bottom lip trembled. "My son is alive. We were talking. He was so close to me again." Toshinori's stomach tightened. "Miss Midoriya, please listen to me," she whimpered, wiping away the tears that found their way down her flushed cheeks. "I spoke to him. I heard his voice." Her lips formed into a wobbly smile. "He's alive, but with those awful people." Bakugo paled. Toshinori took a shuddery breath. "How?" was all he could choke out. I don't know. He confirmed that it was with the group who attacked Jaku that took him, Shigaraki, and the rest of the Paranormal Liberation Front. I've never heard my Izuku sound so scared before." Her voice cracked. "Please help him, All Might. I'm begging you." "Auntie, they are hurting him." Her composure completely vanished the very second she uttered those words. "I heard them. I heard him screaming." Bakugo's head snapped up so fast. His neck screamed in protest while his hands burned against the thin sheet. "Miss Midoriya, are you certain it was your son?" Toshinori stressed. "It could have been one of those villains playing a sick game." Not that the retired hero would say that to the grieving woman. Even if it were true, would the commission even consider preparing a team to search for Izuku's whereabouts? After the villain's raid in Jaku City, everybody was still recovering. Many heroes had resigned, and the public were rioting over the lack of trust they had in the pros. Would they risk sending out the remaining heroes they had for one child? Anger swelled in Toshinori's gut. Yes, should have been the answer, but he knew firsthand how the commission could be. Inko herself seemed to sense the conflict going in Toshinori's mind as she immediately focused her next choice of words solely on him. "You promised me," she whispered, her voice like glass shards cutting into Toshinori's soul, "that you would protect him." Strolling along the glowing tanks, illuminating the shadows with bursts of neon, was the doctor. After Izuku Midoriya's pathetic little escape attempt, he knew it had been the best course of action to move him into his main working quarters, surrounded by his many children growing away in their respective tanks. While All For One's current absence made it more difficult to add new quirks to each Nomu creation, the doctor had his own resources to make it happen, though it would take a lot longer. But he was a patient man. After all, he had been blessed with a longevity quirk that aided in his fortune. Shuffling over to Shigaraki's bedside, he ran a hand through the manic youth's limp, unkempt hair with a soft coo, like an elder caressing their newborn grandchild. His hand slipped away, immediately beginning to unbox a long syringe from a metal case. He held it up against the dimming light on the ceiling, giving the small liquid a ghostly glow, before he turned back to Shigaraki and began rolling up his sleeve. He thanked the stars that their leader was currently out for the count. having many unpleasant memories of the boy in his youth and his absolute hatred of needles. "Just a little something to settle you, dear boy," he spoke as if Shigaraki could hear him, voice eerily hypnotic. "It'll help you with your fast recovery." Once it had been empty, he set the needle aside and immediately began removing his gloves with a soft hum. Then his eyes wandered over to the other occupied bed beside his master's successor, his other patient, albeit unwilling. "And how are you doing, Izuku-kun?" he sang lightly, smiling at the thick gauze around the boy's broken leg. "Seems to be healing rather nicely, which is good." His hands trembled roughly as he snatched up a tray containing equipment for a blood draw, his eyes wrinkling with delight behind his thick goggles. "I hope you don't mind, but I need more of your blood for my latest batch of Nomu. Master may not be here, but his flesh and blood serves as a decent replacement." He let out a hearty chuckle, shoulders shaking with mirth, as he quietly stepped around Shigaraki's bed until he was looking down at the slumbering teen. With a smirk, he slipped on a new pair of medical gloves and held up a butterfly needle. "But then again, it's not like you really have any choice in the matter now, is it?" And that was all for chapter 5, folks. I hope you enjoyed it. Now, doing Inko's part was really interesting because I wanted to add emotion, so I hope it didn't sound like I was laughing, because one time my mom told me that my fake crying or fake acting crying kind of sounds like crying or laughing. Oh dear Lord. But yeah, so I hope it felt like she was crying, and I felt, I don't know, I really want to put you in the story as if you're watching it, like how you watch the anime or when you're reading the fan fiction and you're like, oh my stars. But yeah, and I don't know if I already did, but I have a one shot that I was able to read. I don't know if I posted it before this or if I'll post it after, but if I post it after this, then surprise, you are going to be getting a new one shot, which is really funny and I enjoy it. If I posted it before this video, I hope you enjoyed it. And as always, folks, have a good morning, good night, good afternoon, good evening, and good morning. Did I say that? I'll say it again. Have a good morning. And as always, folks, have a good everything. And I will see y'all next time. Mwah. Bye.